It's another Wednesday and therefore another Ask Uncle Lee. So if you have any questions about all the topics we talk about on this channel, magic, witchcraft, spirituality, the occult, all that stuff, then just put it in the comments to one of the Ask Uncle Lee videos and I will add it to the list. But let's just get straight into this week's questions. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okie dokie. Right, so this week, our first question is from NC44 and asked, do you work with the Qliphoth? I did just reply to this because I've previously done a video on my opinion about the Qliphoth, and I've spoken about it extensively in various videos and lives and things like that. However, the response to that was, how do you integrate negative emotions then? And I thought this was quite interesting because it does very much speak of, this whole idea of what the Qliphoth is actually doing within Western magic itself, really. Sorry, I just want to push myself over here a bit. So what we find, a lot of people come from Christianity, and they kind of have this complete opposite reaction when they leave that faith. They kind of go to the opposite extreme almost. But what happens is they take everything that they've been taught and everything that's been ingrained and programmed in them over to this other practice and just carry on, basically. So what they're really doing is taking the Christian worldview, replacing the God with another God. But the dichotomy of the duality, the dualism which is present within that is still there. It still exists. So we have then they may have come from the right hand path, now they're on the left hand path, and therefore the right hand path is now bad, evil, and everything else. So they've just basically just transferred everything into a different paradigm. But all the other, the entire worldview is still intact. And as I said, this creates this dualism. There is dualism within Christianity. There's dualism within many, many different faiths, many religions. There probably shouldn't be, because, if we kind of extend ourselves into the cosmos itself, considering the entirety of the universe, the entirety of creation, from the smallest atom and all the spaces between, which is a nothing, into what we become, what we see, how we can interact with the other worlds and all this stuff, we taking all of that into a whole, there shouldn't be any dualism, there shouldn't be any separation, and this is the problem, it's a separation. So you get some faiths which consider or have the ideology that we are separated from the divine. And yes, we are, because we create this separation. And we keep constantly creating this separation. We keep reinforcing it with this idea that there is this left hand and this right hand, or this good and this bad, this black and this white, this we keep having this separation that keeps getting reinforced over and over and over again. And how do we fix that? We do the work. We stop considering ourselves as being separate from the divine, because we are the divine. Everything is divine. Everything within creation, whether it is perceivable, whether it is categorical, able to be categorized. Stumbling over words again today. Whatever it is, and even those things that cannot be categorized, the all, the everything, and the nothing, okay? Everything, all of it, possibly everything, the unseen and the seen, all of it is divine. You are divine, I'm divine, everything is divine. My pen, this is divine. But this is actually qlipha, because it is a shard, a shell, a husk of the reality. We have to go beneath the skin of it. We have to go to the underworld, and the underworld is beneath the skin of things, and the skin is the shell and the husk, and that's the qlipha, which I'm not sure everybody's understanding. But anyway, so to get back to this separation, the duality that we find exists within a lot of Western magic, and this is where, again, we come up against it with this whole aspect of the qlipha and the qliphotic tree and the tree of death. So somebody decided that the tree of life wasn't good enough. It didn't have the entirety of creation and the cosmos within it already, which it does. And therefore we have to kind of try and represent this darker side, this evil side, with the tree of death. So we'll just create this other tree, this other universe. Just kind of like fart it out or something like that. Sorry, this is my opinion of the qlipha and the qliphotic. I think it's ridiculous. So you kind of have this whole qliphotic aspect, which now separates again. It's, if you look at the tree of life, if you actually study it properly study it, and you don't even have to become a scholar of it, just study it enough to understand it. It has the entirety, the absolute entirety of the all and the nothing within it. It already exists there. There is no need to go pursuing all of these other aspects. Yes, if you go deeper into the Zohar and the teachings within that, then you start looking at all of these aspects, all of these considerations of what may have been or what may exist. They start to explore this qliphotic aspect, but whether it's 3 or 4 or 7 or 10 spheres, worlds, husks, nobody's sure. And the Zohar was written 13th century, and since then the scholars still don't know the answer to all of this. The scholars, not the people who are just like coming up with this stuff. The actual scholars of Kabbalah do not know the answer to this. So why all of a sudden all of these left-hand path people know all the answers to the qliphotic stuff and this aspect? But coming back to, again, the duality, because you asked about the negative emotions. So this again creates a duality. What is a negative emotion? Let's start with that. We talk about negative emotions, we talk about negative energies, all this stuff that brings us down, creates depression, anxiety, and things like that. But at the same time, we have, a lot of people consider anger to be a negative emotion. Now, if anger is a negative emotion, then getting angry in order to defend somebody or, protect something, that becomes a positive emotion. So, we can have a look at all these things from both angles. And how do I integrate negative emotions? I accept them for what they are. There are many ways you can do this, and long before this whole qliphotic tree of death came along, long before all of that, we had people like Franz Barden, Initiation into Hermetics. He speaks about this dark mirror and light mirror, and you go through this exercise where you kind of call up, you think about all the things. You start with the black mirror, and you think about all the negative things about yourself, and you start writing them down. You go through this whole exercise, and then you start categorizing them. You start splitting them up and putting them into little boxes and categories and everything else. And then you start to deal with it. You start to accept those things about yourself because they are part of you. There's no need to reject them or put them in cages or things like that. Then what you do is, this is where, this all comes into this whole idea of shadow work and the Jungian aspect of it, and where, again, a misunderstanding comes in that shadow work is just about our negative side. It is not. Franz Barden goes into this really early. So then you do your white mirror, or your light mirror, and you start listing all the positive things about yourself. And you go through exactly the same exercise, and you start categorizing all these positive things and putting them into little categories and boxes and everything else, and then you start to deal with that. But what happens is, when you're going through that light mirror, your ego gets inflated. You become like a really horrible, ignorant arsehole. Your ego just gets so big that you are unmanageable, and you kind of look back at yourself in that situation, and you don't like yourself. So whether it's positive or negative, it's going to have a reaction which can be a positive or a negative thing. Okay, so it doesn't matter what aspects we're looking at. There's going to be a duality which we then need to accept, which we then need to bring into equilibrium and bring into balance, and that's the whole reason for, well, I consider the whole reason for doing all of this magic, for pursuing all of this knowledge, and pursuing all of this gnosis, is to bring all of this stuff into equilibrium and bring it all together, because it shouldn't be separated. Sure, we are separated from divinity, whatever we may consider that, or how we may interpret divinity. Therefore, we should work to become united with it, because if we consider divinity to be everything and nothing, that means we are divinity. Okay? If I am divinity, and you can do this yourself, point to yourself and say, if I am divinity, then why am I trying to separate myself from myself? Okay? We're supposed to be bringing ourselves into union, bringing all of our soul parts into union, bringing them all together so that we can become better, we can become whole. But then we have this idea of this tree of death, which is trying to separate from the tree of life. I even read an author who said basically that what the qliphotic tree is trying to do, what we are trying to do in this process, is separate ourselves further from God. Then you don't understand this concept of God. Yes, maybe you're trying to separate yourself further from the Christian God. That's fine, but that's just one God. If you're talking about God in the aspect of the all-knowing, of that which is the power, the force, which permeates everything and has all the time, from the beginning of existence, whenever that was, because, we have to then start looking at things from a non-linear perspective. Starts getting into the mysteries, and we start having to trying to unravel those. But we have to step through the doors in order to experience them. All of this stuff, okay? So we go down these avenues, these rabbit holes, but trying to, if we can, again, it comes back to interpretations. How do we interpret this aspect, this idea, this thing we call God? Is it the great architect, the great mind, the great all? Is it this all-knowing, the Om-Nil, what I call the Om-Nil? Or is it this idea of the Christian God? If you're trying to separate yourself further from the Christian God, then, just do it. You don't need to go through this whole process of going down this tree of, along this tree of death and along these qliphotic shells and immersing yourself more and more in the illusion, because the shells on the husks are the illusion. They are this physical reality, which is considered in Buddhism to be Maya, to be the illusion. It's not the reality. It's what's keeping us from the reality. If we talk about the ego self, simplest explanation is start a meditation practice. For the first 2-3 days, you sit down every day and you do the meditation practice, and then the 4th day, ego self comes along and says, it's only one day, let's just leave it today and do it tomorrow. And then the next day comes and, I left it yesterday, why not just leave it for one more day? And the ego self just carries on doing this, and it keeps you away from what you're trying to attain, what you're trying to achieve. So we have to get mastery over the ego self. Same thing really. But yeah, How do you integrate? Coming back to the question itself, sorry, I am rambling about this one. Coming back to the how do you integrate negative emotions? I integrate them. I don't need to go down this whole qliphotic thing to experience my negative emotions. I just experience them, accept them for what they are, and integrate them into myself. It's a process, and it's a constant process. I still have negative emotions. Obviously, I go through them. You probably find that over a period of time, these waves that you kind of get kind of start to level out a bit. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't bother doing all of that stuff just to incorporate negative emotions. And I know it seems like a lot of people are using the Qliphoth to do their shadow work, and if it's working for that particular purpose, then that's fine, it's working. But after doing that, and that's a constant process, it's not something you ever stop doing. You do your shadow work, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. Something that never ever ends. You've got to keep constantly looking at yourself and examining yourself and doing all of this work. So you can't stay in the illusion, in the husks, in the shell all the time. If you want to actually experience what's in the underworld, in the other world, you've got to break through the shells and the husks and get through into the juicy stuff, the fruit. So really, just do the work, do the normal shadow work that people are doing, I suppose. Even when I started, we didn't even have this idea of Jungian shadow work didn't even feature in witchcraft and magic, but we kind of came across things like the expression of know thyself. So you are still constantly doing this type of work where you are trying to get to know who you are, understanding the negative and the positive aspects of yourself, and working with them, working through them if you need to, and integrating them into who you are. As again, this is about bringing yourself into union with yourself, all of the parts of yourself, not just the soul parts, but the emotions, the negative, the positive, the things you don't like about yourself, the things you do like about yourself. All of these things are part of who you are. They are part of your whole. And therefore we need to stop trying to separate them and bring all of this stuff into union. And if we consider divinity, or this God aspect, whatever we want to call it, name it, title it, we are that. Not everybody's going to have the same viewpoint I'm going to have, obviously. And that means that not everybody's going to have the same understanding of this omnil, this all-knowing, the same way I do. That's perfectly fine. Everybody has to have their own worldview and their own perspective and work through that. Keep developing your worldview. But you've got to. Me personally, I believe that we have to bring all of these things into union. Bring them all together. Find the equilibrium, find the balance, and keep that equilibrium going. So anyway, I really am going to ramble about this one. I hope that gives you some kind of perspective on my own understanding of it anyway. So I'm going to go on to the next question. This is from David02178. Hi, Uncle Lee. I have a question that may sound odd, so please bear with me. My craft is a hodgepodge, but focused around folk traditional witchcraft. I have never done any work with demons, but am not against it at all. Just not had a need as yet. The other day I woke up and the first thought was the name Semyaza, and this persisted for the next few days, and even sorry, I'm just going to actually pull this up on a different screen because it's a bit small on that screen. Let me start that paragraph again. The other day I woke up and the first thought was the name Semyaza, and this persisted for the next few days and even pings a few times a day still. What makes it a little odd is the voice I heard was your voice saying it. I think I did apologize in the comments for that. Now I am pretty sure that it was because the only thing I have ever heard this, the only time I've ever heard this name was on an old video where you spoke about the Watchers. However, I never usually wake up and have the name of a spirit on my lips, never mind the leader of the Watchers. Doing a search, I find the usual Wikipedia poop, but nothing more. Are you able to tell me anything else about Semyaza and any tips for reaching out? Alright, so you are focused on folk magic and traditional witchcraft. With Semyaza, what you're going to find is that another name for Semyaza, and this isn't going to figure into everybody's lore, but in a lot of it, another name is Azazel. Okay, now Azazel is, again, in some lore, not all lore, is considered to be the leader of the Watchers, but very much connected with Tubal-Cain. So Tubal-Cain was considered to be the avatar of this angel Azazel. And if you go into the whole aspect of Tubal-Cain, I'm sure you've been down the rabbit holes within traditional witchcraft. You would have come across the whole Tubal-Cain aspect, or Tubal-Cain. And this is very much connected with the Forge God, with blacksmithy, and all such things, and associated with Wieland and Vulcan quite often. But coming back to Tubal-Cain, avatar of Azazel. Azazel is another name for Semyaza, and in fact sometimes the two names get mashed together. So go down that avenue. What I would recommend, I'm sure you have come across, my face is probably going to light up just now because I'm going to have a bright screen in front of me. Let me just get back to, I just want to get to the book so I can just read the chapter titles. Nigel, no wait, hold on, please hold. I just want to make sure I get the right author's name as well, because it could be Nigel Pennock or Nigel Jackson. I also get them mixed up. Okay, Nigel Jackson, Pillars of Tubal-Cain. If you haven't read this book, grab it if you can. I think this is one of those that kind of went a bit expensive. But chapter titles: The Roots of Angelic Magic, The Children of Heaven, Tower of the Titans, Lord of the Morning Star, Outer Space, Out of Time, The All-Seeing Eye and the Pillars of Wise, The Sons of the Widow, The Temple of Solomon, The Queen of Wisdom, Lilith's Lantern, oops, it just skipped, The Black Bull and the Golden Horns, The Art of Hermes, The Serpent and the Tree, The Angel of the Earth, the High Priest King, The Spear, The Cauldron and the Stone, Black Mary and the Sacred Blood, The Baphomet Mystery, The Hangman, Orion, The Wild Hunter, and it goes into appendices, Contacting the Angels, The Hymn to Hermes, The Ceremony of the Peacock Moon, The Fire Rite of Tubal-Cain, The Gospel of Cain, The Baptism of Wisdom. Now, if I'm sure you've heard of this author before. Nigel Jackson is a traditional witchcraft author. I mean, Nigel Jackson wrote Call of the Horn Piper, Masks of Misrule. This is definitely a traditional witchcraft author. And if you start going into Robert Cochrane's stuff, Cochranite traditional witchcraft, you are going to definitely come across Tubal-Cain. Because that was the whole Cochrane thing, which then went into I'm forgetting names now. Yes, forgetting names. Okay. So anyway, so go have a look for that book. Try and find it, because that's going to answer a lot of your questions here, especially from the perspective of traditional witchcraft. This aspect of the Watchers, the Grigori, Tubal-Cain, Cain himself, all of these things, all of these aspects, all of these mythologies that tie in with the Book of Enoch and all such things, doesn't feature in everybody or every traditional witch's worldview. Okay, it does form part of some people's worldview. You may even start exploring things like the Sacred King cycle, the Holy Grail, which is a very much older aspects within mythologies than, you know, King Arthur and things like that. Much older. But you know, you'll start going down those avenues, and you'll come across information, for instance, like biblical references, which then tie into witchcraft itself, traditional witchcraft, which something like the Joseph and Mary coming to England. Was it England or Ireland, or can't remember exactly where. Glastonbury, going to Glastonbury, and bringing their grandchild with them. So, you know, there's this. If you watched or read or watched the Da Vinci Code and the series, that whole series, you're going to sort of recognize that in there as well. There's some interesting stuff in those movies and books. I don't think they actually get to the truth of the matter. It's speculation, but it kind of takes all of those mythologies and aspects and kind of ties into them. It's interesting stuff. It's interesting stuff to explore. But yeah, Semyaza Azazel, definitely have a look for that book, because it's going to answer all of your questions, specifically, as I said, from a traditional witchcraft perspective. And go down the route of Clan of Tubal-Cain, Cochranite witchcraft, and all those things, and you'll probably find more answers there. Okay. Anyway, I think that one does sufficiently for that. So I'm going to go on to the next one, and I'm going to go over here again so I can read it properly. All right. This is Don't You Know Me? 1, 2, 3. I don't know, do I? I'd like to know your take on possession. Here recently I've had 2 experiences which were unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. I felt enchanted and mystified and began to do some dancing and stretching which felt otherworldly, and the entire time it's like I had control of my body and mind, but something else did as well. It was awesome and equally terrifying because it was the first time anything like this ever happened. Before this took place, I had done some meditation and cleared my mind in the bathtub for about an hour or so. That was very early in the day. Later on in the night, I began to do Lucifer invocations, and then went to a shrine and placed my hands together, bowed my head and meditated for a moment, and following this, I began to invoke and speak into the astral plane. I'm not going to lie, I sent out a message to the old gods and spoke to them as I should have, with respect and care, but I told them what I needed and wanted, and then after the dancing, stretching came. You know those videos of people dancing on spirit trips? It was kind of like that, truly maddening, because I've never done that once in my life. I asked to heal and stretch my body as one of my requests. Now I sit here, and as I look back on it, I don't know how to feel but grateful. Okay, so this can be termed spontaneous dance. I do spontaneous singing, which you've probably heard me do if you go to, I do the live once a month, the Cauldron, which is a healing. So I do spontaneous singing specifically for healing purposes within that, but I use spontaneous singing with when I'm invoking particular spirits. So I'll start singing and letting the energy come through. So what this really is letting the energy flow. You may find that some people tie this into the Nordic practice of Seither, or seething. If you look into Jan Fries's works, what's the book's name? It's specifically about Seither. Anyway, have a look for Jan Fries, or Jan Fries, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I have been told and I've forgotten. I'm going to blame it on old age. But anyway, so it does get tied in or likened to that. It may be slightly different what you're doing. So, but it might be the same thing. I mean, that's really about bringing the answers through. And in this regard, what's happening is the energy is flowing. Okay, so if you think of a body, this is us, a body. Let me just try and get in the frame here. All right, and then the energy comes along and it hits. Okay, and the body is so stern and strong and rigid and unmoving, and therefore it just hits. Now, if you allow the body to become flexible, it will start to move with the energy. Okay, so as the energy comes along, the body moves with it. So that's what's happening. The energy is entering your body, and your body is starting to move with the energy, the flow of the energy. When I do spontaneous singing, I allow the energy to come out of me in sound, and everybody's song's different, everybody's dance is going to be different. But this is what it really is. It's just energy flowing through you, and you asked specifically for healing and to stretch your body, and you got a very, very specific answer. I know you enjoyed it. I can tell from the way you wrote. You said at the end, but grateful. Explore it more. It is a fantastic thing. It's an absolutely fantastic thing to do, and it's part of doing trance work as well. Because what you're doing, you're allowing yourself to let go, and letting go is a very important aspect of many, many things within magic itself. Actually letting go, giving up control, that becomes very important, especially if you are wanting to have some kind of two-way communication with the spirits, because they don't, stand in front of you and talk like you and I would. If you were, knocking on my front door and I open the door and we go, "Oh, hi, how are you?" and you would reply verbally, it's not the same kind of conversation. The conversations we have with the spirits are very, very different. Yes, sometimes they come through verbally, sometimes they come through as images and impressions and thoughts and feelings. Sometimes they come through as this flow of energy. And this is why when I said I do spontaneous singing, I do it for the healing thing, but also for other things. I've done it when I've done curses. I've done it when I've done healings. I've done it when I communicate with them, with the spirits. I allow it to come through, and sometimes it changes from singing, from a melodious type of verbal emittance to some kind of raw speech, but I don't understand the language. It's just complete gobbledygook to me, but it comes through, it comes out, and I know the spirit is then there and with me, and I can then start thinking about what I want, what I want to accomplish, what direction I want to take the energies, what direction I want things to move in according to my own will, all of these things, and then I start getting replies, and when you get the replies, you can kind of feel it. I mean, as I said, I don't understand the language that's coming through, but I can feel it. I can feel what's happening. I can feel what's being put into place, and when you're dancing, you might feel that too. You might feel if it's something that needs to be broken or removed or disintegrated in order for you, an obstacle, for instance, that you need to get over, you need to disintegrate and break through, you may feel all of a sudden this force breaking it, and then all of a sudden the energy will flow freely again, and your dance will become free again. So definitely experiment with it. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it makes you feel so good afterwards. Because you have this energy flowing through you, and it's marvelous. It's a wonderful feeling. Okay, and that is it for today. So let me just push myself over to the center again without, totally screwing up the camera and everything like I did last time. I'll see you next week. As I said before, if you have a question, just put it into the comments of one of the Ask Uncle Lee videos, and I will be sure to add it to the list. Okay, so that's it for this week. Have a good one. Cheers for now. Bye bye.